everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well out there, and today we're going to head back to the early 80s once again for another slasher film. But before we do that, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I would appreciate that. Also, a shameless plug for our TeePublic page. I'll leave a link in the description box below if you want to check that out. And today we're going to talk about a slasher film that really was kind of lost for a very long time until about 2005 when they released a DVD through Synapse. And since then, a Blu-ray was released through Vinegar Syndrome, and that movie is Effects. Yes, this film officially came out June 4th of 1980, although it says it premiered in November of 1979. This was actually shot in 78, but it never truly got a theatrical release or a home video release until they released this DVD in 2005. But yeah, anyway, Effects came out in 1980. We'll go with 1980. It's an hour and 24 minutes long. It's rated R and had a budget of only $55,000. So this was a very low budget film, but this was made out and around Pittsburgh with some people very familiar to George A. Romero, people that have worked with George A. Romero. We'll get into that in a second. This film was directed by Dusty Nelson. He was directing commercials and whatnot in Pittsburgh. And when the opportunity arose to do this film, they based this film on a book of a friend of his, and we'll get into that in a second. In this film, we have some Romero regulars. Joe Pilato plays Dominic. He's a cinematographer / effects man on this low-budget horror film. And obviously, most famously, he played Captain Rhodes in George Romero's Day of the Dead. Also in this film, as the director of this horror film, is John Harrison plays Lacey. Now, he also would go on. John Harrison had done the music for Romero on Day of the Dead, Creepshow 2. He also did the music for Tales from the Dark Side, the TV show. But he also directed Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which is a very underrated anthology film. I reviewed that last year. You can check that out if you scroll on down. And also in this film, another Romero regular, the great Tom Savini plays Nicky. And also he did the makeup effects for this film. And this film actually was based on a book by William Money, and it was called Snuff. And in this film, we're introduced to our main cast. They're shooting this small, low-budget horror film in the director's house and around his house. And Dominic, who is the cinematographer / effects man, thinks it's just a low-budget job. And he takes his job very seriously. And everybody else is partying at night and that. And one night, when he's in the living room with Lacey and a couple of the other guys, Lacey puts on this film that he says is from Britain at first, and it shows this woman being brutalized and slaughtered by this guy in a mask. And then he admits that, what if I said I made it? Like, they're talking about realism in film, and Lacey goes, what if I told you I made that film and that woman's completely fine? And I can prove it. And Dominic's like, it's too much. You can't, it's just too much. It looks too real. The audiences won't accept it. Well, Dominic is also sweet, and this girl that's an actress who's helping him as his assistant on the film as well. And as we get deeper into the plot, we find out that Lacey plans on actually killing people on film for real, but passing it off as just fake for the movie. And Dominic gets caught up in this cat and mouse game. They take him out in the woods, and they're filming it. They've hidden cameras everywhere. And at the end of the movie, Dominic shoots Nicky, Tom Savini's character, and he takes off with this girl who he really likes, but he knows she might be in on it. And they're in the car and they're driving away, and the car blows up, and that's the end of Effects. And Lacey finishes his movie, and we see the marquee on a billboard outside of a movie theater, and that's the end of the film. So what to like about this film? I think the cast is pretty good here. Joe Pilato is really good here. He's a lot more reserved here than he is in Day of the Dead. Although that role needs him to be more bombastic the way Rhodes was in that film. But this film, he's a lot more reserved, but he comes off really good here, Joe Pilato does. John Harrison's good here too, even considering, I mean, he mostly did music, and then he got into directing. But he does pretty good here as a director. He has the icy cold stare that is necessary for this role, so I think he comes off pretty well. And Tom Savini is pretty good too as Nicky. Tom Savini's been on camera before and doing stunts, and he played one of the bikers in Dawn of the Dead before this one came out. So Tom had, experience in front of the camera. The ladies here are good. The other actors are pretty good as well. So overall, the acting's not bad. Overall, you could tell they didn't have a whole lot of money. Now, the effects, when you do see them, this isn't overly gory considering Savini did the effects, which might surprise you if you've never seen this film. I mean, the snuff film they watch in the living room is pretty brutal, but it's shot like in a sepia or black and white kind of, so you can't really see how bloody it really is. You can see the blood, but it's not as vivid as it would be if it was in color. The idea here is the selling point. I love this premise. This kind of premise was kind of ahead of its time. Although you could tell, you could say it has a little bit of a mixture of It's the Most Dangerous Game, which was done before. But the idea of this filmmaker making this low budget horror film, these people think they're really making a film, but he's actually plans on killing some of them on film and passing it off as fake, is a really novel idea. And I would say, after I finished the film last night, I'd never seen this before. I remember reading about it in Fangoria. I remember when this came out, I just picked this up on eBay, and you could also get a Blu-ray on eBay for about $20 from Vinegar Syndrome of this film if you're interested in this film. I remember hearing about it, never saw it. I remember Savini even talking about it in interviews, or I seen him at cons and it was brought up, but you can never get it until this DVD came out. This was the first official release. So this was kind of like a forgotten, lost movie for years, because it only ever played at like Sundance Film Festival, the director said it played at, and maybe another festival, and that was pretty much it. It never got a home video release, nothing. So watching this last night for the first time, at the end of the movie, I'm like, would be an amazing remake. There's a lot you can mine from this premise and do it with a little bit more. I mean, obviously they only had $55,000, so they didn't have a lot of money. And for the money they had, they pulled off a pretty damn good film. There's issues here. I think it takes a little long getting to the main story, even though it's only an hour and 24 minutes long. But I like Joe Pilato's character, and we spent a lot of time with him, so I didn't mind it as much. But it could have been tightened up, or a little bit more oomph could have been in those early parts of the movie until we got into the main meat of the plot. But overall, I really actually enjoyed this film at the end of the day. It's not perfect. It's not the best slasher film, if you could call it that. We're going to consider it a slasher film here, but considering they're making a slasher film within this film. But, there's low budget issues here that you could tell. The sound kind of goes up and down, and I don't think it's just the audio mix on here. I think it's probably their limitations with the equipment they had, and they probably shot this pretty quick. There's a good hour-long documentary on here with interviews with Romero, Savini, John Harrison, Joe Pilato, the director Dusty Nelson's on here. And the women are in the film are interviewed too. So if you're interested, there's a really hour-long, really good documentary on here about the making of the film and the problems they have with distribution. That's why this film never got a theatrical release. They had distribution issues. The people they made deals with it fell through. So this movie just kind of went off into obscurity, unfortunately. Also in some circles, this was known as The Manipulator as well. That was the other kind of title for this film. At the end of the day, I would say this isn't a perfect film, but the premise alone, I loved the premise of this film. And I would actually like to see this remade. I don't think it'll ever happen, but if it did, it would be pretty damn cool. At the end of the day, I would give effects a 6.5 out of 10. A 6.5 out of 10 for effects. Have you ever seen this one? Have you ever even heard of it? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews, but until next time, bye.